Disturbing details coming to light tonight in the case of 3 Bisbee children physically and sexually abused by their father. Their mother aware but not stopping it. Now we learn the children's father confided in 2 leaders of his church over 7 years, admitting his sins. Since a Tucson lawyer says those leaders kept secret within their church hierarchy, but the church says its bishops were prohibited from reporting to law enforcement under Arizona law. Lupita Murillo has a shocking story in tonight's News 4 Tucson investigation.
This 24-page civil complaint was just filed in Cochise County against members of a Bisbee church, accusing them of not protecting 3 of their youngest members.
It's the most shocking case I've ever seen in my 35 years of sex abuse cases.
Lynn Cadigan is no stranger to sex abuse cases. She's represented victims for years, but she says this case is different.
I represent 3 victims in a sex abuse case I'm bringing against the Mormon Church, the LDS Church, and the bishops for failing to report what they knew was going on.
This is Lisa and Paul Douglas Adams of Bisbee. In 2017, the couple was indicted on 27 counts of multiple charges involving sex crimes against children. The victims, 3 of their kids. Adams was a Border Patrol agent. He committed suicide inside a jail cell before he could stand trial. In 2018, Lisa pleaded no contest to 2 counts of child abuse endangerment. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison, just released last month. The children, now with new families, battling the effects of the long-term abuse. Cadigan says leaders within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here in Bisbee could have stopped it if they had just called police.
The shocking thing about it is that this church knew that these girls were being sexually abused and the subject of pornographic videos, at least one of them.
But the church says it did everything it could under Arizona law and even excommunicated Adams. According to these documents, this all started a decade ago when Adams confessed to his bishop that he was sexually abusing his young daughter and putting videos of the acts on the internet. The bishop, years later in police interviews, said that he followed church policy and Arizona law and provided counseling to Adams, including Lisa in the sessions too. The next bishop to head the Bisbee church says he did the same thing.
And they sat next to these girls at church. They taught them Sunday school. They gave them moral advice. They taught them about God, yet did nothing to stop the rapes. Nothing.
But aren't clergy in Arizona mandatory reporters for child abuse? The answer is yes, with one significant exception. It's called clergy privilege. That is when clergy learn about the abuse in confidential communication. According to Cadigan, the Mormon Church claims that that's how they learned about the abuse in the Adams case and believes it didn't have to be reported.
I frankly think that's an absurd position. When you weigh the right of a child to be free from rape versus the right of a church to keep a crime a secret, clearly the child's safety wins out.
Complaint states that both bishops reported the abuse, not to law enforcement, but to the Mormon Church helpline. When interviewed by the Department of Homeland Security, the first bishop stated that he was advised in the helpline call that he needs to continue counseling sessions and that there's no duty to report to authorities due to the clergy penitent privilege. So he didn't call police. The next bishop to run the Bisbee church also called the helpline, according to the complaint, was also advised that the clergy penitent privilege and church doctrine prohibited him from reporting the abuse. The church sent us a statement. It says, in part, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has no tolerance for abuse of any kind. Our hearts ache for all survivors of abuse and go out to the victims in this case. As clergy, the bishop was required by Arizona law to maintain the confidentiality of the father's limited confession. Notwithstanding, the bishop took the few details he had and made efforts to protect the children, primarily through the mother. The bishop urged the family to report the abuse or give him consent to do so, but they refused. The bishop also convened a church disciplinary council and condemned the limited conduct he knew of in the strongest terms by excommunicating Mr. Adams from the church in 2013. It was not until law enforcement made an arrest of the father that the bishop learned of the scope and magnitude of the abuse that far exceeded anything he had heard or suspected. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and its clergy worked to handle this matter appropriately, consistent with Arizona law. Cochise County Attorney Brian McIntyre disagrees.
It's my understanding that that it's been presented to your news agency that the statute prohibited disclosure, which is just not true. The statute provides a limited exception for times when disclosure is not necessary based on certain bona fide religious principles. But it is not both a sword and a shield.
And he says the criminal investigation is far from over.
These are Class 6 felonies. The statute of limitations period is 7 years from discovery, or when we should have discovered the conduct. And I realize it's taken 3 years, but no one's letting this go. The damage that was inflicted on these children was very, very significant, and we intend to see it through.
Meantime, Cadigan says she plans to hold the bishops and the church hierarchy accountable in civil court.
These bishops were told to keep this a secret for 7 years. I don't know how you can look a child in the eyes and tell them to love God and Jesus, know they're being raped, and do nothing.
Cadigan says she filed the complaint in an effort to force policy changes within the church when it comes to mandatory reporting. Investigating for you, Lupita Murillo, News for Tucson.